In today's video, we'll look at how do you actually start a game of chess. So we've learned the basic, we've learned the rules of the game, we know what each piece is worth, we know how each piece moves, and we know how to set up the board. But how do you actually start? Now that you're looking at your opponent, you're wanting to begin a chess game, you need to know what to do in the first few moves. And it basically comes down to controlling the center, moving out your knights before bishops, and there's a lot more to it, so let's just get started. Let's start this video with the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. And just like I mentioned, you need to control the center, you need to bring out your knights before bishops, and you need to prioritize king and queen safety. So what a lot of beginners tend to do is move some pawns on the side of the board somewhere, or they generally don't know what to do. So sometimes you see beginners play h4, sometimes you see beginners play a4. I mean, it's possible, but as you can see in the bottom right part of this video, I've included the engine lines, the analysis lines, and this essentially means these are the computer's top moves. So chess is a game that is completely run by computers in 2026, of course. This means that computers are now able to calculate the best variations, the best lines, the best moves based on brute force calculations. So they are simply powerful enough to see what is a good move depending on the position on the board. And in this particular situation, as you can see, the first few moves the computer actually recommends are d4, knight f3, e4, c4, and e3. So what do all of these moves have in common? Well, we have d4, so that's obviously this move. We move the pawn from d2 to d4. And we have knight f3, so we move the knight from g1 to f3. We have, let's see, e4, and we have e3, and we have c4. So one very basic but very important concept in a chess game in the beginning of a game is you need to control the center. So the center of the board is the most powerful part of a chessboard. The reason why is because almost every piece is better in the center than it is on the sides of the board. So if we, for example, have a knight which is in the center, let's say we have a knight on e4, it covers all of these squares. So this is where the knight is located. It covers all of these squares, which is a total of 8 squares. If we have the same knight, for example, here, this actually only covers 3 squares, as you can see. It can only jump to 3 squares. So that means a knight who is in the center of the board is much more powerful and has much more capabilities and much more options than it has when it is on the side of the board. Which is why we call, so sometimes in chess we say a knight on the rim is dim, which essentially means a knight on the edge of the board is bad. So yeah, you know, I mean that's very very basic thing that we teach beginners. So it's very easy to understand. Another very easy thing to understand is, for example, the same happens when you have a bishop. For example, if you have a bishop here, it covers all of these squares. And that means it is a very strong bishop, of course. I haven't counted them, but there are a lot of squares, of course. And if you have a bishop, for example, here, it's a little bit more safe often, but at the same time, it can only see these squares to the side of it and backwards, which essentially means that it is not as powerful when it would be here or somewhere in these center 4 squares. So that is a very important thing you need to know. So one of the things that I would recommend is play e4 or d4. One of the two is pretty much good. I am an e4 player. I play almost only e4, but a lot of other players play d4 as well. I mean, it's something you need to learn. There are a lot of d4 openings. There are a lot of e4 openings. But pick one of them, try it, see if you like it. Try to in the future, if you want to get better, find an opening that starts with either e4 or d4. And yeah, that's basically it. So let's say we start with e4. Let's say our opponent plays e5. So the opponent does the same thing as we do, which is a very common thing you'll see in chess, is that he copies us and he also wants to play in the center. And now we need to develop. Now, if something like this happens, you need to make a plan on what to do next. And as you can see by the engine lines, again, there is knight f3, which is a clear favorite here from the computer. There's also knight c3, it says, and there's bishop c4 and d4 and knight e2. But often, in almost all of the situations, what you want to do is bring out your knight before your bishops. I mean, a move like bishop c4 is okay here, but knight f3 would be a very good move, and obviously one of the most well played, or one of the most played openings in chess, of course. Here you have imposed a problem on your opponent. I mean, it's very simple. If your opponent plays something like this, you are simply threatening to take a pawn, although your opponent is also threatening to take a pawn. But yeah, as soon as you impose a danger on your opponent's pieces, what does your opponent want to do? Well, obviously your opponent needs to defend the piece that is being attacked. So in this situation, he can play knight c6, and yeah, that simply means that he is protecting the e5 pawn. And this is a very common opening that happens in a lot of chess games. There's actually there's like bishop b5 here, which is the Ruy Lopez. I used to play this a long time ago, but I don't play it anymore. And yeah, there are a lot of other things you can do. You can also play bishop c4, which is, I think, the Italian. Yeah, exactly. I haven't played knight f3 in a long time, actually. To be fair, I play a lot of knight c3 after e4 now. So knight f3 is not really in my playing style anymore. But yeah, there's a lot of options here. And another move here is knight c3, which is also completely fine. The computer also thinks this is okay. And now knight f6 is definitely the best one for black. If black plays anything else, let's say bishop here, for example, as you can see, the engine doesn't really approve. It's already plus 1.6 or 0.6, I'm sorry, for white, of course. However, yeah, usually what happens in these openings is that sometimes it fluctuates a little bit towards the white side, and white tends to be a little bit better according to the engine. But yeah, in real world, it isn't easy to take advantage of that. But the most important thing of this part of the video is that you need to move a pawn in the center first. And after moving a pawn in the center, you need to bring out your knights and afterwards your bishops. And in most of the cases, you will survive the opening like that. The only problem you have is that, let's say you're playing with black here, for example, and you simply think of the rules that I've just mentioned, and you think, okay, I'm gonna develop my knights before my bishops, I'm gonna put the pawns in the center. You also always need to think about what is your opponent actually threatening. It's always important to think about what is your opponent threatening. So here you're just hanging a pawn, like I just mentioned in the from the white perspective, but you're just hanging a pawn. So you need to also think, of course, about, hey, what am I actually trying to do? What am I defending? What am I attacking? What is my purpose? What is my goal? And as I've already mentioned in the first part in the first video of this series, is also you are playing with the black pieces. You are always one tempo behind, so it means you are responding to a threat that white is imposing upon you. So that is very important to realize. As black, you usually want to, in the beginning, defend. You want to prevent your opponent from doing things that you don't want. So in order for in this position, you want to prevent the e5 pawn from being taken. So you play knight c6. So now I wanted to teach you a very simple opening. And yeah, the better you get at chess, the more openings you will learn. So openings are obviously a series or a sequence of moves that happen in the beginning of the game that are mostly figured out by now. So usually the better chess players obviously play different openings. They've played so many different things. They have looked at it with engines, they have looked at it with computers, and they know what is good and what isn't. So there are basically two different types of openings you need to know about. And one of them is a system-based opening, and the other is a regular normal opening. And the difference is very simple. A system-based opening is an opening that you are basically going to play no matter what the opponent does. So you are able to play a series of moves no matter what the opponent is doing. And the London system is one of the openings that I'm going to teach you right now. It is not seen as the best opening by better players, of course, but it has everything to do with the fact that the London is a system-based opening, which means it is usually taught to beginners because it is easy to remember, and you don't really have to respond to what your opponent is doing, at least not a lot. So And the other opening, the regular opening, is usually a theoretical line or theoretical set of moves that you have to remember. So what that means is essentially when your opponent is attacking you and they're doing certain things, you need to know what is the proper way to respond to this. And like I mentioned, a lot of people, a lot of good chess players have figured out what the best ways to play certain openings are. However, you have to really remember, like, oh, I'm doing this, then my opponent is doing that, then I need to do this. And that can really become difficult very easily because, as you can imagine, a chess move has maybe 10 or 5 good responses from the opponent, and then you have to remember 5 different ideas after each one of those moves. And yeah, as you can see, it becomes a very dense nest of branches very quickly. One way to remember this is to think of it as if the London system, so a system-based opening, is a monologue. You are simply saying something and you are not really listening to what your opponent is responding. And a regular opening is a conversation where you are responding to what your opponent is telling you. So you are responding to what your opponent is playing on the board. And that's basically it. So the London system starts off very easily. It is a d4 opening. Like we've just mentioned, d4 is one of the 2 main starting moves in a chess game. So d4, e4, and d4 is the chosen openings, the chosen first set for the London system. Usually what you see here is d4 or d5 from your opponent. There's a lot of things that your opponent can play. Your opponent can play anything from knight here to knight here. You will even see something like this or something like this, but there's a lot of different things your opponent can do. But that's the beauty of a system-based opening, is that you will pretty much always play the same thing, unless your opponent goes like e5 or something, because then you need to capture, otherwise you can put your bishop out and stuff like that. So yeah, like I mentioned, on basically every move you will do the same thing. The most seen will be d5, especially on the beginner level, and then you are going to play knight f3. Let's say your opponent plays knight f6, you're going to play bishop f4. And this is basically already the London system and the London opening. Yeah, I mean, the only real thing you have to maybe care about is if he goes here right now, which is an idea. Computer here says you need to go bishop e5, which is, let's see, bishop e5, so you have to go here. Yeah, I mean, you could also probably play something like this, although that maybe gets away in the beginning phase, the idea of the London system. So yeah, but other than this, if your opponent doesn't play knight h5, you're pretty much basically already gonna know the next move. So let's say your opponent plays knight c6 here, you're gonna play like e3. And what you want to do right now is, well, let's say something like this. You get your bishop out, and yeah, well, I mean, the rest of the game maybe something like this. You're gonna castle, and yeah, this is basically the idea of the London. What you often will do in the London, which is a bit more of a complex idea, is maybe goes for knight c3 and then knight b5, attack this c7 pawn. In some lines, you could play something like c4. Yeah, there's a lot of ideas, but the most important thing is you want to bring out your bishop to f4, and then you want to play for e3, and that's what you have to remember. You're gonna only close this structure with the pawns after the move bishop f4, after your bishop is outside of the pawn structure, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, once again, system-based opening, we teach those to beginners, especially because we want to prevent our beginners from stressing when they don't know what to do. And obviously, like I mentioned, the other openings are conversations, and this is a monologue, so you only have to say the words out loud. You don't really have to think about what your opponent is doing that threatens you. Okay, let's go to the next part. So the last part of this video, I wanted to talk to you about the early queen attacks. I actually have a completely separate video about this, so if you would like, you could also search this up on my channel, because it is about how to punish early queen attacks. But I'm going to briefly mention it here as well. So a lot of beginners, when they start with chess, they learn from friends, family, online, that there are very easy and quick ways to checkmate the opponent if you're playing with white. There's a very, very famous term called scholar's mate, which is essentially a checkmate in 4 moves, I believe, which happens from the white side, and if you're playing with the white pieces. But a lot of beginners tend to play like this. The first thing I'm going to tell you right now, don't do it, because the reason why is maybe it works below 500 elo or 600 elo, but after a certain while, if you get a little bit better, it won't work anymore. People know how to prevent you from actually checkmating. And then you're stuck with a bad queen, and yeah, well, it's going to be very clear when you see the engine lines and we see what exactly the computer says about these moves. So what happens is we play e4 first, and let's say our opponent plays e5. Now this actually starts with either bishop c4 or queen h5, and let's say we go bishop c4 first. We set up the mating attack. So there's a lot of things to know about chess, but one of the things is that the f7, the f2, and sometimes the c7 and c2 pawns as well. But obviously the f7 and f2 pawns are very weak, and the reason they are weak is because they're only protected by the king. There's a knight here, there's a bishop here, but this knight doesn't cover this bishop doesn't cover this, well, this rook also doesn't. So the only way this pawn is protected is by the king, which is essentially a very weak point, because if you know that obviously the more a pawn is defended by more pieces, the stronger it is, and the less vulnerable it is. Means that the f7 and f2 pawns can be prone to attack very easily. So let's say our opponent plays something like knight c6 here, for example, which is fine. We can go queen h5. And yeah, like I mentioned, once again, the engine already doesn't like this. The engine already says this is better for black, as you can see. So we can read this engine by saying, okay, the top move that we see here is the move we just played, and the number here that we see next to it is minus 0.22, which means that it is in favor of black. The further down it goes, the more in favor of black. The further up it goes, the more in favor of white. We'll cover this also in the next video, by the way, so if you don't know exactly how this works yet, don't worry, it is going to be in the next video. And for now, all you have to know is that a minus is good for black and plus is good for white. So as you can see, minus 0.22 is better for black, and as you can see, queen h5 is an inaccuracy, is what the computer says about the move queen h5. And yeah, here, for example, if your opponent doesn't know what to do, he's going to maybe play knight f6. And as you can see, now it says m1, and which means that it is checkmate in 1, so mate in 1. And yeah, that means it's not good. So the moment you see an m in the eval or in the equation here, you know that this is not going very well for you. So in this particular situation, there is a simple checkmate in 1, which we just talked about, which is the f7 pawn. So obviously the f7 pawn hasn't been protected by black by any piece, and now the f7 pawn is attacked by both the bishop and the queen. And the queen going to f7 means it is protected by the bishop, which essentially means that all of these squares are now covered by the queen. The king has no way to block, the king has no way to escape, the king has no way to, or there's no way to take the queen here. Checkmate. So the game is over. And how do you prevent this then? What do you do to prevent this from happening? Well, the first move you want to play is g6, and the reason why g6 is now good, often what you often see is that queen h5 is played first, which means that there's another problem. The other problem with queen h5 first is that now if you play g6, the e5 square is actually hanging, and if you block, you simply take the rook here. So this is a very common line you'll see, which is why if you play queen h5 first, g6 is actually a bad move. You need to now play knight c6, and then after bishop c4, attacking this pawn twice, now you need to play g6. So the moment you play g6, you need to be sure that a e5 is protected. And obviously there's a pawn now. Well, this pawn is attacking you. If you take the pawn, you lose your queen, so let's not do that. And there's no longer an immediate danger on f7. Often what will happen here is that people will reintroduce the danger here on the f7 square, which they by playing queen f3, and now they are double attacking this f7 square again. However, now we can simply play knight f6, and the reason why it is allowed now is because if you take the knight, there's actually a queen protecting and you lose your queen, which is not a good trade, because we mentioned the queen is 9 points and this is 3 points, so you'll go down 6 points, which is not good. And that's essentially how you play it. I mean, now there's a variety of things you can do, but overall, this is a relatively often seen position at beginner level, and this is just not good. I mean, as you can see, it is minus 0.3, which is not horrible, but it is at the same time not good for white. And if you're white, you want to be the one who is determining the pace of the game. You want to be the one who throws the punches. And now you've given the initiative, as we call that, to the black side. So black is now the one who is able to throw punches at you. Yeah, that's basically it. And so don't do this, which is very important. Once again, I'll include the video where I cover this more in depth in the comments, of course, or in the description of this video. So that was the video for today. Hopefully it has been helpful to you. If it has, please consider leaving a like. And in the next video, we'll look at how chess notation exactly works. We'll look at how do you actually write down if you've made a chess move. And at the same time, we'll look at how does the engine exactly works. How do you analyze games. So see you next time.